Welcome back to the Ben Wehrman podcast, friends. Today's guest is a very fine gentleman by the name of STACKINBEETS. Mr. Stackin will be audio only, as he's one of those actual smart people who stays anonymous as the rest of us dox ourselves and get put on the Fed's domestic terror watch list for posting Roman Empire collapse memes. Mr. STACKINBEETS calling in all the way from Belgium. Thank you so much for joining me today, sir.
It's a pleasure to be here, Ben. It's an honor.
So anyone who listened to my last episode with Hoddle Harry, number 48, I believe, this is a follow-up because I really recommend people listen to that episode first as sort of a primer for this, because he told his story of going through all of these similar rabbit holes I talk about all the time on here, the carnivore diet, Bitcoin, and Nostr being the big ones. And as part of his story, he continued to mention STACKINBEETS, his good friend, and you guys know each other in person in Belgium, right?
Of course. Okay. We're pretty much best buds.
That's amazing. So tell me a little bit about your guys' just backstory, like how you guys met and how you became friends, and how that started back in Belgium.
Sure. Well, our history is actually pretty boring compared to our present, but sure. Like we just met in, how do you call it? I think high school? No, it's the thing before high school. I don't know how you say it in America.
Middle school?
Yeah, middle school, I guess. Yeah, we just, how do you call it? We vibed, I guess, well. He was a very welcoming person, I guess you could call it. Yeah, as I said, it's really a boring past. It
was just totally organic. I mean, when I think about my best friends, there's not really any crazy story there. It's kind of like you're just around and like, hey, let's hang out. And
exactly.
It just grew from there. And and as Harry told me about, and as you know, he told me about you as well. You ended up going through all these different rabbit holes. So was your order the same as his? I think that his was first Carnivore, then Bitcoin, then Nostr. Was that the order for you as well? Maybe you could walk us through each of those.
Nah, actually, for him, it's not first Carnivore. It was also pretty much my order, pretty much because I was telling him about my experiences, and yeah, I guess he sort of mimicked it, but he did all the work himself. I gotta say, of course, I was just a gentle breeze guiding him towards the path of happiness. Let's say.
Awesome. So was it Bitcoin first then? I may have had that wrong.
Exactly. Yeah. Bitcoin.
Okay. So how did you find Bitcoin, sir? Tell me your origin story, where it came into your life, and how that became a big part of your being.
Maybe I'll first start with a bit of background on myself, if that's okay.
Of course.
Yeah. So yeah, I was like the weird pasty white loner kid until my teens. Was always gaming, was learning about computers. Yeah, I was I had a pretty lonely childhood, and though I didn't know it at the time, my father figures were pretty much all game characters. I got pretty much all my values from characters in game. Then, moving along a little, in my late teens, I started doing psychedelics, going to parties relating to those drugs, I guess. I don't know if you ever heard of Goa.
I have, yeah. It's kind of like based in India, right? I'm not sure if
that's the whole history of it. In India, but Goa itself is a music style.
I had a huge techno phase, actually. I was really into Infected Mushroom. I'm not sure if you've heard of that.
That is exactly it. That's Goa. Yeah. Goa trance, to be more exact.
When I was in high school, that was like my go-to. Every time I come home, I'd throw on some Infected Mushroom. That's super funny. I'll put some of my favorites in the show notes for people to listen to.
Oh, great. Yeah. So yeah, but those parties, that wasn't exactly me. That was just me, trying to fit in somewhere. I did get very interested in music, so I also became a composer and producer because of this. Like the stuff that I did release is mostly ambient soundscapes, but some party compatible stuff as well. You can also find that on Wavelake. My name under there is Isuna.
Awesome. You'll be the
Yeah.
first wavelength link I put in the show notes, so people can go
Oh,
check that out
cool.
too.
Cool.
I'd love to
Yeah.
hear more about that later, but maybe after we finish the story.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, then there's also links to Harry eventually, so it'll come. In my mid-20s, I was in a pretty bad mental state. I was extremely paranoid. Like even opening my door to go to my mailbox, which was like right outside the door, that was an absolute ordeal. Yeah, I had a pretty rough time then. Uh, Harry, who I had like not a falling out, you could say, but yeah, we just didn't have any interaction for 5 years. I guess that was mostly on my part because yeah, I was going through a lot, blah blah blah. And yeah, he contacted me after 5 years, like, hey, dude, you wanna hang out sometime again? I was like, uh, yeah, sure. But in my paranoid state, I really thought that he had bad intentions, you know? So the first few times that he came over to my place again, that was actually hilarious because it's gonna sound extreme, but I always carried this knife in my pocket just in case he would try to attack me. Yeah, I was in that kind of state.
Does he know this? Have you told him?
Of course, we laugh about it all the time. Yeah, so yeah, and everything went really smooth after that. I would say before this period, we were just regular friends, I'll call it. But after this break, I guess we really got to be best friends.
That's really
Um,
cool. So he basically broke through that shield that you had built up because of this mental health issue and helped, and he understood that you were going through these problems. So he stuck there with you, and that became a really solid friendship because of that, I would say, right?
um, you could say it like that. It's not like he had to. I was still, it was just 3 encounters and it was just back to normal. It wasn't like he had to do anything yeah, specific.
I love
So
that. That's cool. That's super
yeah.
cool.
um, yeah. So at the time, I was working this hardcore factory job in a triple shift system. So that means like an early, a late, and a night shifts all after each other. That was absolute hell, especially with my paranoid ass in such a brutal environment, But however, it paid very well, and I didn't buy anything with that besides food. So I saved up quite well for 5 years. Then fast forwards, I met this girl, got her pregnant. Miracle, you could call it. Even during that time that I was in such a bad mental state. She did live abroad, so we made the deal that she would move to Belgium so we could raise the kid. Yeah, so I
And
ended
this
up
is
being
what year, just so we know where we are in the timeline. Sorry to interrupt. We're
let me think. Meeting the girl, that must have been like 6 years ago, 6, 7 years ago,
okay, like 2018 ish.
or like nah, more like 7, 8, 9, something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Where was I? So yeah, I ended up being a stay-at-home dad, partially due to my still existent issues, and my girlfriend could finish her studies at an academy. So yeah, because I could afford it with my savings, that I would stay at home with the kid and stuff. Then again, a fast forward, relationship wasn't going well after some time, so we split up. My savings were running out at this point. Now the Bitcoin part is coming soon. uh, which of course is partially responsible for the strain on the relationship, when the savings are running out. And yeah, it was around that time that I started learning about crypto. But took me a few months of research, and then I realized, yeah, there's only one fucking coin that matters. I yeah, I realized no other coin was a solution to anything. It was just buzzwords and creating a problem to create a solution, or however you want to call it, I guess. Like I tried to research like all of them, but none of them just seemed to make sense, you know. Only Bitcoin made sense. Yeah.
It was the exact same for me. Like I jumped into the crypto world around 2017, and I spent like 3-4 years just shitcoining my ass off.
Oh,
I had
that's
like
a
a
long
crypto
time.
blog and had a whole wallet full of just like 15 of them. Just fell into every single one of the classic narratives, because
Yeah, me
before
too,
you
of
really
course.
put into research, they have really good marketing, and I really do
Hmm.
think it's one of the best run giant just scam complexes ever, because there's so many of them, and they all, you know, I mean, there's like thousands of altcoins, and they all have their own teams that are spinning up these marketing pitches for you. And there's no regulation anywhere, of course, so it's total wild west, and it really exposes people's tendency to just follow the emotions rather than the logic and do the work, which is like you and me
Yeah.
both, and pretty much everyone else. It's like almost universal that people get pulled into that first, and this is part of the Bitcoiner journey, is that you you have to forgive yourself for making those mistakes and just strip away those emotional ties that you built to these shitcoins
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
and start actually reading and doing the work. And you read the Bitcoin Standard, and you start reading Mises and Austrian economics and listening to
Yes.
podcasts, and then it starts to come together. And this is so common for everyone. It's part of that journey, and it's why we talk about how Bitcoin really changes us. And people on the outside who haven't been through that don't understand. It sounds like too big of a statement about orange coin, but it really does.
Yeah.
It pulls you through these rabbit holes, and it just gets you thinking in a different way, and it changes how your mind works, and it's super powerful.
That's exactly my thought. Bitcoin really does unlock the mind. For example, I used to be shit at maths, but I realized I was just uninspired because when I got into Bitcoin, I really wanted to verify everything because it just seemed too good to be true, you know? So like I had to verify Bitcoin's formulas for myself because I couldn't believe it. And while I was doing it, I felt like all the friction I had with all those intimidating looking things with maths, like it was all gone. The friction was gone. So it's really not about the difficulty. It's about the meaning behind it, you know?
I would say the same exact thing for me, but for reading, just reading. Like I
Oh.
never really enjoyed reading growing up, just because the school kind of force feeds it to you, and
Mhm.
I never. It was never my idea, and I don't know. I think most kids are kind of similar. Like they kind of grow up in reading as like this homework task, and it's sort of bred into us as like something you have to do. And so, many years later, after I graduated and I start learning about Bitcoin, it inspires me to read more because I want to learn. And so you kind of start from scratch and just naturally want to learn the way that humans are supposed to learn, which is by curiosity and inspiration, like you said, instead of just having it forced onto you by a government mandated school system. So it's just another one of those things that's just a total reset. One of the questions I was going to ask you as well was there any catalyst that really tipped you over to Bitcoin? Was there a certain podcast or a book, or was it just an accumulation of just hearing good points from Bitcoiners?
Hmm. I would say indeed it is the accumulation. However, I could say some names that really hit the hammer on the nail for me. Robert Breedlove, for example, that guy. Wow, I think I listened to every single one of his podcasts, and I think he has quite a lot. How many? I think was it 900 videos or something? I think I listened to every single one.
It's a lot. Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
he's
yeah.
he's going hard.
He's amazing. Yeah, it's his approach, which is like the more philosophical approach. That one really struck, yeah, let's say gold for me. Yeah. Um, yeah, I think like many Bitcoiners, when we get into it, like Sailor is like that mad preaching guy at first, but once you understand what he's talking about, like the madness dissipates, and it's just your signal, you know.
Exactly. I love Saylor because he just doesn't hold back. And
Yeah.
I think so many of us who've been in the crypto world will remember when we just thought he was insane and we had a negative view toward him. I certainly did early on, just because, well, I don't know about negative, but I just thought he was so close-minded and just too toxic maximalist, and all these other people were too. Because when your ideology is based on nonsense and there's like an actual signal out there, it feels like a threat to you, to your
Yeah,
worldview. Because
exactly.
when you're inside that vortex, you just can't see it yet, that they are trying to help you, and when once you've reached the Bitcoin realization and you try to pull those people out, you can really see it with a very clear view because you've been there, and you can see that they have that layer of defense up. Because when you're in an altcoin, you just need the story to be intact. It's all about the story,
Hmm.
because that's the story they were fed. So when people come in and say your story is bullshit, it doesn't feel good. And it takes a special kind of person to be able to see that they're actually like doing you a huge favor, and they should be
Yeah,
your
yeah.
best friend. Love
Agreed,
it, man.
agreed.
So you found Bitcoin, and so that was your first one. How did that lead into the next? I'm assuming the next was Carnivore, or was there a bit of space there? How did that go down?
Bu- bu- bu-
Because
like,
you're still struggling with these mental health issues throughout all of this, right? You still haven't. That's one of the things that's still in the back of your mind.
well, to be fair, it's at a pretty all right stage at this point in life. But as to your question, I think after Bitcoin came Nostr first. But what can I say about the Nostr thing?
So
Yeah,
much to say.
sorry?
So much to say about Nostr.
Yeah,
Is
that's the
I was
problem
just
with this
scrolling through
stuff
your
with
feed this morning.
direction.
I'm like, yes, this guy gets it. This guy gets it.
Uh, yeah, to me, Bitcoin is like the parent solution, I guess you could call it, and Nostr is like the child solution, I think. And it's just an extension of what Bitcoin solves. I still think Bitcoin is the the omni fix, however you want, however else I could call it. And Nostr is a perfect addition to that. And as I think as Hodl Harry also pointed out, I made this post about Nostr being the gateway drug to the Bitcoin. It really washed over me one day because I heard others say this, but it really didn't uh, connect as much with me yet. But then, just out of nowhere, it sprung to me. Yeah, exactly. This is because you can read the screenshot. That's that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, they just work together so well. And
Yeah.
I had Will Kasarin on recently, and also Derek Ross a while back, and that's one of the things that we always talk about is how, man, these two things are just perfect together. And like you said, it helps to get someone introduced to one primes them for the other. So for me, it was, I think for most people on Nostr right now, they started with Bitcoin and came to Nostr. But there's a growing number of people who are coming to Nostr first and then learning about Bitcoin through Nostr, which is a very interesting new dynamic. And there's been such a huge rush of new people on Nostr in the last few weeks, because we just had the Telegram CEO getting taken into custody in
Uh-huh.
France, which was huge. There was the Nostriga conference, some great talks that went semi-viral on X. Jack always retweeting those out and giving them lots of attention and eyeballs. And then we had Brazil banning X, and people just flooded in and just said, "Hey, there's this thing that can't be banned. You want to try it out?" And so there were a ton of Brazilians coming in, and most of them don't know anything about Bitcoin. They just want to be able to have social media. So it's very interesting to watch, and it will be interesting to watch, I should say, uh, the Brazil just getting the orange pill as the purple pill is already done, and just how they can weave together in this interesting way. And it's going to be really cool because there's so many people out there that just want to be able to use social media and get paid for their content. Even they don't care about Bitcoin. They just want to earn value for the work that they put in. And so it's really easy to take them through the steps and make sure that they understand that there's huge value in both of these technologies.
Indeed. And it's very funny how the same concept seems to apply now. Like when you're trying to explain Bitcoin to Fiat people, like they seem flabbergasted. And when you try to explain Nostr to most Bitcoiners, they also don't seem to fucking get it. You know, it's some derangement syndrome because they're so attached to their precious little eggs or whatever, their caged birds, that they don't seem to connect the fact that this is the Bitcoiner thing to use. So why are you still on this centralized platform where all your data is not yours, where you can get banned, you can get censored, you can shadow banned, all that shit, and it just doesn't connect with them.
And I would say it also sort of exposes people's real intentions, I guess. I'm not sure that's the right word, but when people have really big followings on X and any of the centralized platforms, there's an incentive there to like keep that going because they've spent a lot of time building that and they have a lot of cloud over there and a lot of audience. So certain people want to stay there and defend that so their work doesn't go away. But then there's the people like Preston Pish, Matt Odell, Gigi, Jack Dorsey, who have huge audiences over on X, but they're using those audience to push people over to Nostr, and some of them are even deleting their X accounts altogether. Like their Gigi and Odell completely got rid of them. So they've completely burned the ships. They're all in. And I don't know if I'm ever going to do that. I'm going to probably keep using my X to just try to shill Nostr. Like just this morning, I posted like a screenshot of engagement on X versus engagement on Nostr for the same meme that I posted. And I got 8 likes on this meme on X, and on Nostr I got 200 and a bunch of Bitcoin. So I'm just trying to use it to walk those people through the process and show them this just changes everything. There's no algorithm that can kneecap you for not standing in line with the algorithm. And it's truly an overpowering force. And I think so many people are under Elon Musk's spell where he continues to talk about free speech and how this is the free speech platform, but they don't understand that you're never going to get that on a centralized platform. It's always going to be, at best, temporary if you have a better leader, but you're always going to have a leader. And Nostr, just like Bitcoin, like you said, this is the Bitcoiner platform. It's the exact same concept of just getting rid of leaders altogether. There's none. And it's better that way because it's a completely open system where everyone has a fair playing field. And this whole conversation around algorithm, I know a lot of people are thinking, well, if there's no algorithm, how are people going to find my content and how am I going to grow an audience? But for me, it's been significantly easier to grow an audience over there and get engagement because I like to post some spicy shit, and the algorithm on X doesn't like that. It stops my post from growing, and it shadow bans me. Like pretty much everyone who follows me, they say oh yeah, I never really see your post that often because multiple years ago, I went through this thing with the GME world. I'm not sure if you follow the GameStop story at all, but I've essentially just been going after the GameStop CEO, Ryan Cohen, for years, telling him, get Bitcoin on the balance sheet. You need to buy Bitcoin. And they opened an NFT marketplace. And I'm like, bro, fuck. and so I just went on this crusade of just basically shitting on him for this NFT marketplace, saying you need to buy Bitcoin instead. These shitcoins are not going to do it for you. And they just kept adding more and more altcoins to the mix and just getting more and more convoluted. And a bunch of these GME people got mad at me for coming after their hero. So I got blocked by a ton of people. And ever since then, my engagement has been minuscule compared to what it was. I think that just there's a part of the algorithm that notes how many people have blocked you, and it shadow bans your posts accordingly. So I think that was literally the end of my my X reign where I was getting, many hundreds of likes on every post, and now I get like maximum 15. It's massive drop. And
Yeah.
Nostr, it's completely opened up, and I'm having a great time. I'm having a ball over there.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I mentioned. Yeah, I also used Twitter back in the day, but I just don't think I've ever had a single valuable interaction on it. Not that I can remember, at least. And yeah, for me, the end point was indeed around the time that Musk took over. I share Harry Hodl's opinion on Musk. I think he's the scum of the earth. He's the why I hate this guy. I'm just gonna do a little rant here, if that's allowed. If this
Rants are always welcome here, my friend.
Oh, great. The reason why I hate this guy so much, compared to other guys in his caliber, Gates and all the others, is because this guy acts so much like he's the fucking hero. And, I don't see Jeff Bezos or anything acting like that. Like, he's also a douche, but, he's not out there with his super cape doing this, acting like he's helping the world. I think Linalden says it best on Nostr. I have 2 screenshots actually of her where she bashes the guy to no end, and I think she got like 1 million stats for that zaps. That was a beautiful thing. She can say it better than I ever could, so let's leave the whole Musk thing behind us with this. I could maybe send the screenshots later on. You can post them if you wish.
Nosterlin is a force to be reckoned with.
Definitely.
And
Definitely.
she was one of those first people that really showed that when you're on a platform where you can't be banned, you have so much more freedom to really speak your mind. And
Yeah.
I remember there was someone posted a screenshot of her rant over on X, and it actually did well because, who knows? I mean, I don't even know if there's an algorithm that like actually shadow bans you for talking bad about Elon, but surely not going to help you. on the platform where he is the CEO, and yeah, it changes the way you think. Just like we talked about how Bitcoin changes the way that you problem solve and go through these steps to learn how a system works. Nostr changes the openness of your mind because you are able to say whatever you want, and you don't have to worry about having your platform rug pulled. Like everyone that has things on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, they have that in the back of their mind, even if they don't know it. It's unconscious. They can't like go too hard on any hot button topics, or their account could be suspended. I know countless people that have had this happen. Just yesterday, Rob Wolf, who is one of the people in the diet world, he posted this lady. I think her name is Dr. Tina Moore. I don't know if she's like technically a carnivore, but she's sort of in the diet realm, like the good diet people, like speaking the truth and really coming after big food and big pharma. And her account just went poof. Hundreds of thousands of followers just gone. And he was posting about it like, hey, what the fuck? And that can happen anytime to anyone. And the incentive is so backwards, where the more truth that you tell and the more truth to power that you're pushing and the more important evil entities that you're exposing, the closer you're getting to having all of your work taken away. So that's not a good incentive structure. It's going to keep people in a box of just talking about what's safe and nice and not going too hard, which I think we really need right now. I think most people that are paying attention can tell that we need these people more than ever to be talking about this stuff. And centralized platforms are not set up to incentivize that.
Precisely. Protocols will eat the platforms. There is just no stopping it. We've seen the light.
Absolutely. All right. So what do we have next? We have Carnivore coming up next. Where does that come in?
Well, I wouldn't really know what to say about this. I think just like Hodl Harry, like I started thanks to the Safety podcast. I can add as well. As Harry said, the Kate Shanahan one in particular, where she where she goes on and on about seed oils. That was the one that opened my eyes, and I immediately stopped eating all the fucking grocery store foods and went all the way to meat, because what else are you gonna eat if there's no seed oils in your diet? It pretty much has to be fucking meat, or animal based products at least.
Yeah, for sure. So you saw an instant benefit from just taking the seed oils out, right? I was the same way.
Yeah. Uh,
Because so
that
I
go
can
on.
also say that safety was definitely an influence on me there. Except I would say actually the more of the fruit and honey people like the Saladino and Aurelius, they were the ones that they had huge Instagrams at the time. They still do, but they made their way onto my feed and really talked about seed oils. And so they were actually the ones that got me down that step. And then I figured sort of similar to like the crypto world, like it gets you out of the total, fiat currency space, but you're still not quite there yet, They're kind of stuck in this middle ground. And then later on I found Anthony Chafee, and Safedine also talked about Carnivore quite a bit. I can't remember which of his episodes it was. I think it was just an accumulation of his, just hearing him talk about it over and over with different people. I know he's had Sean Baker on, he's had Nina Teichol's on his podcast, and just the more he talks about how all he eats is meat, and just realizing that he just keeps on being right about things, I just decided to give it a try. It ended up changing everything for me.
Yeah, there's also so many aspects to this. The fact that it just frees your mind in a manner that's like you don't have to think what am I gonna eat tonight? What am I gonna eat tomorrow? Take you just go to the butcher, you buy 10 kilos of meat, you put them in the freezer, and you just bake meat every 3 days or something, and you're good to go.
Exactly. And I am actually in Mexico right now. I'm in Mexico City. I just landed a few days ago. And so there's so many layers to how this diet just makes your life easier, and a lot of them become clear when you're traveling. First of all, you're not constantly hungry all the time, like during these days
Mm.
when you're moving around, like when on flight days. I mean, I remember back when I was on carbs, I was just, where's the McDonald's so I can get a burger, and when am I getting on a plane so I can get one of their, shitty food snacks, and you're just always waiting to feed yourself because you're in this like sort of stressed out state when you're flying around too. So not only is your brain just inflamed by the inflammatory food you're eating, and you're more stressed than you should be about this, situation of, flying, which can be stressful. A whole different rabbit hole, like why it's stressful, because the government has basically taken over the airline industry, and it's like as fiat as you could possibly make it. So it's meant to be frustrating. I had my freaking steel pan stolen by TSA, or it was the Mexican version of TSA. They took my steel pan because it could be used as a weapon, apparently. So they literally took my pan from me, and it's just complete nonsense everywhere you go. But anyway, so the fact that you don't even have to really eat, I just fasted for a couple days around my flying day, and it's easy. You're not starving all the time and just ravish for carbs. When you're running on fat, you can actually fast for days at a time, and you don't have those sharp pangs for hunger like you used to. So it smoothed things out in that way. And I did my first shopping run yesterday. I went and just got a ton of meat in my cart, and I just filled it up to the top with meat, got some butter and salt, and I was done. That's all it took. And I know that there are people around the hostel that are trying to find these like organic, fruit shops, and they're looking for farmers markets all over the place to find produce that isn't, totally covered in pesticides. And it's just like a huge chore. And then, they have it in the fridge. And when I look in the hostel fridge here, it's just full of, I can like see the plants are like rotting already. Just
Yeah.
and it just turns all into food waste. And because you're on the clock when you have plants in the fridge to eat. And I still remember back when I was eating plants, my nemesis was the spinach bag. I always had spinach, and because I thought it was so good for me, I just had a big heaping handful of spinach every night. and I would just put it on top of my pasta or on top of, whatever dinner I was having. I would just put a pile of leaves on top because I thought that was so good. And I could never get the perfect cadence of having the right amount of spinach in the fridge so I could eat it all and it wouldn't go bad. It's just, it just makes life so much more complicated.
Yeah. I must say I agree with the time spans you can have in between of not eating, because I remember before the carnivore I was eating all throughout the day, all throughout. Then now, like when I go to work, I just bring three tiny sausages, three tiny ones, and I'm good for the whole day. It's insane, really. Like they say, it's more expensive to eat meat, but if you look at the amount of meat you need to have compared to the amount of shit, it compensates, you know.
Yeah, and those, they're not taking the full equation into account either, because like we said, a lot more food gets wasted, so you're not
Mhm.
actually eating it all. You're creating more garbage. It's bad for the environment, bad for the landfill, everything, and you are making yourself sicker gradually also, which turns into hospital bills and medical bills later, which are
Mhm.
huge expenses. And like you said, you just don't have to eat as much. So when you actually look at the amount of meat you're eating, I probably eat like 3 pounds a day, maybe 2, 3, depending on it. Like it changes a little bit. Like if I'm doing one meal a day, I'll probably have like 2.5 to 3 pounds in like one giant meal. But I kind of go back and forth. And right now I'm doing some bacon and eggs for breakfast and then just a bunch of steak for dinner. And when you actually look at the amount of food you're eating and were to measure the cost, as long as you're getting it at grocery store, and like most people will be buying at the grocery store. I know that there's even better ones out there. Like if you can get direct from a farmer, it's even better. It might be a little more expensive, but that's just because they put in the work to make it a better product. And I am a big fan of Ken Berry. Do you follow Ken Berry?
Never heard of him.
Really? Oh man.
Yeah.
So he's a big carnivore doctor on YouTube. He has like, I think, almost 4 million subscribers, and he talks about the carnivore diet, and he's a big proponent of it. And the way that he puts it is just buy the meat that you can afford. You don't need panda massaged meat to feel good, to get good nutrition. You just, the worst quality meat is still going to be better than the best quality plant. So people out there, if the budget is an issue for you, then just get ground beef. Just get those giant tubes of ground beef at the store. I when I was back in Nashville for the Bitcoin conference, I had a huge, like the entire fridge shelf was just full of these tubes of ground beef because I just wanted to, I was in the sat saving mood. I want to save all my Bitcoin because I'm going to the Bitcoin conference. So I'm eating the cheapest meat ever. And sure, it wasn't the greatest, but I felt fine. I felt good. And, you're still totally like within the carnivore boundaries, and you're going to feel great whenever you're doing that. It doesn't matter like what the exact quality is. It's going to be a small difference probably, between the lower quality and the higher quality, unless you're really sensitive, like Michaela Peterson, for example. She needs to have like high quality beef and ruminants for every meal. She can't even have like pork and chicken. So everyone, it's a journey of learning about yourself and what works for you.
Mhm.
And everyone's different. For me, my body works totally fine if I have like low quality meat. I obviously aspire to someday, have a good connection with a farmer where I can always get high quality stuff and grass fed and everything. When I'm home visiting my parents, we live in a little farm town, so there's great quality meat everywhere. So that's always nice. But if your situation doesn't allow that, then don't let that stop you. Just have the lower quality stuff. It's going to be fine. It's going to be better than your carb diet for sure.
Yeah, I think we won't have to worry about being selective anymore after two more epochs or something. I think I think we'll be fine.
Yes.
I remembered something now. When Harry was still um, loving his his mayonnaise and his Fiat food back in the day, like he wouldn't really uh, catch my drifts. I guess the saying goes. until one moment he ordered something, or I don't recall exactly what it was, but he had something with mayonnaise in my house, and his plate was still full of it at night, and we left it overnight, and then in the morning, what was left of the white mayonnaise was just orange fluorescent goo. So it must have been just pure seed oil. Like the rest, it seems it evaporated, and only pure seed oil remained. And it was such a thick goo. It was insane. And at that point, he was like, "Yeah, fuck this. I'm not ever eating seed oils ever again."
Yeah, and you see those videos of people just leaving like margarine out and butter out, in next to a tree and just watch how the ants react. And they don't touch that shit. They don't
Oh,
touch the
really?
margarine. They are all over the butter. They want to eat the butter, and every single animal just instinctively knows that is poison. You don't want to eat it. Nothing wants to eat that. It's just chemicals. And pretty much
Amazing.
every single main food in the grocery stores these days, like 95% of it in those center aisles, is just pure garbage, and people don't understand how damaging it is for them.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. Go on.
So how did carnivore come into all this? So I feel like this is still sort of the seed oil side, like getting rid of the seed oils, but when did you decide you're just going to cut out all the plants altogether, and how did that affect you?
Uh, hmm. Yeah, I guess this was purely based on podcast as opposed to reading and researching myself. Like it's basically you just gotta look at the incentives that certain people have by saying a certain thing. Like you can trust a person that is willing to stake their job on the line uh, for saying a certain thing, as opposed to people that will tell you things that will both get them a wage and not sure where I was going with that line anymore, but so you just got to look at the incentives. I know if someone takes a risk in telling me a certain thing, that I can at least trust in the fact that they believe themselves what they are saying, and this
Yeah,
is
and
how.
exactly, and I think that's a huge part of just this this journey we've been on. And as I was talking about earlier, how I first fell into crypto before Bitcoin, a huge part and a huge lesson I learned from that whole process was how to spot bullshitters and spot people
Mhm.
who do not have my best interests at heart or are just idiots too. And this is such a useful skill to have, just to spot the people who you shouldn't be listening to and know who to listen to. And I would say that's a big reason why I started this podcast, because I feel like I've gotten so much better at finding where the signal is, finding the people who really know what's up, and just bring them on to share their stories, because this is so similar for all of us. And I think this is probably one of the most important skills to have on earth today, is how to spot the bullshit and the bullshitters so you can avoid them, and just become a self experimenter and first principles thinker. Because once you have a strong network of people who are really on the ball, and your own body better, you're you just self experiment with everything, self verify, don't trust, and you just become like superhuman level. It just feels like when you're walking around in the world that you're just a level above everyone because you have these skills, and so few people out there do, because their brains are all clogged up with carbs and their bank account is full of fiat. So they aren't on this level yet. Like, I mean, it sounds kind of elitist, but these are powerful skills to have, and this is why we're trying to get more people on board. It's so important to get as many people as we can, especially those we love, on this train, and it's just a game changer for life.
Yeah, that was beautifully said, man. Their brains full of carbs and their bank accounts full of fiat. That beautiful line. Um, yeah, I'm not sure if I can say much more on the carnivore, to be honest. If it's alright with you, like I have some more Bitcoin stuff to talk about.
Go for it.
Okay. So yeah, you asked me earlier if I was still having like these mental issues, but I think I forgot to mention like thanks to the whole rabbit hole of Bitcoin, like that really solved a lot because it's I think it was partly all the lies that our system is based on that was making me so, so whack in the head. So yeah, now I'm a dad of a 7-year-old girl, and she already knows how to access my Bitcoin if I were to die. So I'm really, it's like a tomb prep, but like with Bitcoin, you know. So I created this riddle only she and I know the answer to. I also considered making like a lullaby for her with the seed phrase hidden within, but like I haven't done that yet. But I think at one point I will. Then I think it's beautiful. Then she could sing this lullaby to her kids, and the seed phrase will be passed on forever and ever. You know?
That's a great idea. I love that. You have to hurry up though. She's getting a little old for that, but I guess like there's no age limit for lullabies. You can just still go
Yeah.
for it. That's such a smart idea, and I'm very curious how she resonates with Bitcoin herself, like personally. Does it really? How has Bitcoin changed her life, inform who she is as a young human?
Phew, well, that's all based on me, of course. It's only what I tell her because she doesn't have any mechanism in her yet to because of course in mainstream schools and shit she just learns yeah a euro is a euro and but nothing behind it. Yeah, in 5 years that euro will no longer be a euro, so of course she's not gonna learn that stuff there. I actually I'm holding back a bit on the whole orange pilling my kids for the reason that um like she is still a kid, so she might just blurt stuff out, and I think it's a bit dangerous because when it gets more mainstream, the whole Bitcoin thing, that she will be a potential kidnap target. You know, if she's like Bitcoin, Bitcoin, Bitcoin everywhere, like she might be like, oh, that her dad must be a Bitcoiner. Let's kidnap her and get a ransom, huh? And of course, that's like the Bitcoiner's weakness, like surrounding loved ones, because you can keep your keys as safe as you want, but if someone holds a dear one hostage, yeah, you're just gonna give him the keys, you know. I mean, I would anyway, if it's for my daughter.
Yeah, especially if those family members that you're mentioning don't have, like speaking of older family members, perhaps like if they aren't in the same libertarian vein that us Bitcoiners are, it, you can't really trust them with these sorts of things because when the government comes in, they're going to fold. Where people like us, maybe not so much, because we've done a lot more research on how they work. um, but yeah, the family aspect is very interesting, and it's very cool to see more Bitcoiners out there, having kids, starting families, and starting them very young on Bitcoin. Like these kids are born into Bitcoin, so it's all they know, which is going to be very interesting to watch, and you're going to be part of that cohort. So that's super exciting.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool, man. So a couple of the things that you mentioned way early on in your story, how which I think are just cool to tie together here. So you talked about how the mental health issues you were having were affecting your relationships, including in school with Harry, etc. And the financial stress was also a factor in your relationships, especially with that girl that you were with. So the financial strain and the mental strain, these are such classic Fiat symptoms. So it's just I'd love to hear your just overarching take on how you see the world today now that you've been through these experiences and been through both the financial hardship and the mental hardship. And do you see other people around you where you are that are going through this? Maybe this could be like a message for what they should, why they should look into Bitcoin and Carnivore and Nostr as potential solutions to these issues that they've been told their whole lives are just genetic and it's just inflation's good for you. You just got to deal with it, and these sorts of stupid narratives.
Ooh, that's a
Big
very
question.
yeah, yeah, big question. One thing I could say, I guess, is it's very difficult to understand Bitcoin if you don't understand the current system. You first have to unravel all the bullshit you've been told and see it for what it is. Once you do, you realize that it's entangled into literally everything. Our food became worse because they want to mask inflation. So the stores and producers have two options when inflation rises. They can either raise their own price for their product, or they can either put shittier ingredients in their products. And what they're most gonna do, of course, they don't care about your. They want to make a big profit, so yeah, they still want to keep their price at the same thing because people be like, yeah, it's 50 cents more expensive. Yeah, I'm gonna go to another product with even shittier ingredients, and it keeps on going. So in food it is, and in relationships it is very, very pernicious as well because it's also a very deep topic. I also got very much into traditional values ever since Bitcoin, and as Hodl Harry mentioned, Patrice O'Neill, he also taught me a very great deal about relationships, and the two of them are such a symbiotic relationship to me, because he really, the way he did his radio show, it's about 12 episodes, he really, by talking to other people and to women, he really shows me, he demonstrates all the mistakes I did in my relationships. It's absolutely crazy how he just nails every aspect of it. And his philosophy, his views on man-woman relationship are, it's always the man's fault. It's always the man's responsibility because it is up to you to guide the woman in the relationship. It's never the woman's fault. You can never blame her. It's always your fault. And I took that advice to heart. And yeah, because I was really a bit in a downer when the relationship broke up, because my philosophy before was I'm gonna be the white knight to the damsel in distress, but it's not. The world doesn't work in these fairy tales, so I think it's a journey many guys have. I think I went a bit off on the our topic. So what was our original?
No,
What was the
I love that tangent because that was one of the notes I took from when I was editing that podcast last night with Harry. I found that, I think he called the Black Phillip Show is what it's called, by Patrice
yeah
O'Neill,
yeah
and I found a full thing on YouTube. So I threw it in the show notes on the last one. I didn't actually get to look at it myself yet, but I definitely plan to. It sounds very interesting.
yeah. So but what was your original question
I think we were
from
just
before?
talking about. I think you pretty much answered actually, just like why people need to be looking into these things if they're having these problems, and just how Bitcoin can help you with your financial struggles. And I guess I can just sort of throw out my 2 cents because you sort of laid the foundation there. If people are struggling financially, it's largely, usually, pretty much always because your money's being inflated away and your purchasing power is lowering. So it becomes more expensive to pay rent, to buy healthy food. Oh, and by the way, the food's getting shittier because, like you said, the inflation is hitting them too, and they're having to put worse ingredients in. And this is why, like these narratives we hear from the government that the grocery stores are like evil price gouging, greedy corporations, when in fact the government itself is the one that's printing the money that's causing all of these inputs to lower in quality because everything's getting more expensive as they print trillions of dollars to just do a million wars everywhere. So people need to just learn that that is the problem. Inflation itself is a problem. I've been meaning to get Jeff Booth on to talk about inflation because that is just the most critical piece of the financial struggle most people are dealing with, and they don't really know it. I think they're just gaslit into thinking that they're just not doing good enough, they're not working hard enough, and it's their fault. And so they just feel bad, and it just makes them feel even worse. when really it's not. It's the government's fault for printing all this money and making them poorer. We should not be poorer in a world that's this interconnected. And myself, coming from the U.S., the richest country in the history of the world, when I walk around there, everyone's living paycheck to paycheck everywhere, and they're not healthy. So people aren't doing well in the richest country ever. There's a disconnect somewhere. And I would say you and I probably both agree that fiat money is the root issue there. It's siphoning away people's purchasing power, giving it to the government, who is always going to be throwing it at bad things. They, even when they promote these good things they're going to use it for, they don't have an incentive to use their money responsibly, or our money, our tax money, I should say, or the money they print, which is also stealing from us. They don't have any incentive to do a good job with it because they pay no price for a bad decision. They have infinite money that they can print. And so that just causes this paradigm where all the normal people are getting poorer. The government keeps getting more and more powerful. It keeps becoming more and more of a magnet to the psychopaths who just are warmongers and don't care about anyone's well-being, but they're really good actors. And so they come on TV and they talk about how much they care about you, but really they're screwing you the whole time. And so that's the money side. That and this is why Bitcoiners so often become carnivores, just go down to health rabbit hole too, is because once you realize that's all connected, it just permeates into everything. You realize that, like you said, the inflation is making the food lower quality. So even the processed food is getting even more processed, and these people are getting more and more unhealthy because of it. And it's this death spiral loop of people's brains just working worse and worse, and they're less able to dig their way out of this. So sometimes they need a helping hand from folks like us who have been through that journey and are trying to help folks. But it's tough because they literally are mentally handicapped oftentimes by the food they're eating and the amount of stress they're under from being on a fiat standard.
Yeah. To add to this, or to further answer the question from before, then you have to look at your time that you have on this planet. I think you can go either way. You can go nihilistic and be like, yeah, but I only have this time left. Why would I give a fuck about anything? Or you can look at it the other way. And like, it's thanks to Bitcoin that I have all this free time, because it just frees up the mind to not think about money. That's the beauty of Bitcoin. You spend so much time learning about money so that you don't have to think about money anymore. So I have the time now. I'm working on this long form article that will be a Nostr exclusive at first. It's about these life-changing experience that I found in this tiny subcategory of video games, like those with deeply philosophical themes. It should be finished in about a month or so. Like all this time I have to do this stuff now. Like in my other free time, I'm enjoying getting certificates from Sailor Academy, like on existentialism, monetary history, Austrian economics. So I'm shilling his academy a bit. But yeah, it's great. It's free, and yeah. And I even have time. What?
I love it. That's awesome. The learning never stops. You're still going. It's great.
Yeah, and even have time. I'm translating books for Consensus Network. Occasionally doing a bit of Alex Svetsky's AI stuff. I think you know it, right?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I actually helped edit some of his work, the Bushido Bitcoin and that AI piece. I got to see that before anyone else got to go through and give my thoughts. It's really interesting
Awesome.
stuff. He's a very interesting, cool dude. I like him a lot. I need to have him on sometime.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I got like half a book's worth of content written about Bitcoin, but that one's gonna take forever until it's finished, if it ever gets finished. I really got a deep, what's the word, appreciation for Saifedean and yeah, all the people. I can't come up with it. Yeah, Ronaldo with Broken Money and stuff. Like all the people that wrote these big books. It's insane how much work there must have gone into that shit. It should be more expensive, I guess, but of course that goes against the whole the principle. Huh?
It's proof of work. That's what it is. It's people just putting in the hard work, and you can tell by reading it for sure. And I'll make sure to put your Nostr NPub in the show notes for everyone to go follow you there for when that comes out. I'm looking forward to it. Just checking it out. So I think we could start wrapping things up here, man. I really like your banner on Nostr. I think it inspired me for your final question here. It's one of my favorite memes ever. It's the Charlie Brown Linus character, and he's saying, "If it can be destroyed by the truth, it deserves to be destroyed by the truth." So my
Yes.
question
Yeah.
for you is, what needs to be destroyed by the truth right now more than anything else to help improve the world?
Give me a sec on that.
It can be multiple things as well.
Yeah. Yeah. To put it very simply, anything that can be destroyed by the truth, that is basically it. Because if the implication is there that it can be destroyed by truth, it means it's bad, you know. That's a very simplistic way to put it, but to name a few examples, centralization, the Fiat food industry, pharmaceutical industry. There's an endless horde. Of course, it all comes down to the source, which is bad money. It's not necessary. It's not necessarily the bad money which is the issue. It's the fact that it's always the people that's the issue. But therefore, you gotta create things that people cannot influence.
Absolutely, and I have a recording with Jimmy Song actually sitting in my folder. I'm waiting to upload, but that one will be one for people in the future listening back on this who want to learn more about fiat and how it's sort of tough to come up with like a clear answer for what the exact the pieces of the puzzle are, because they all come back to fiat money. Fiat money is the Death Star. It's the money printer that the government has. And we've talked about that a little bit today, but I would say that the word fiat is the best thing that I would use for that answer of just the thing that needs to be destroyed by the truth. And Bitcoin is the truth. It's going to destroy the money printer because it makes it obsolete. Nostr is going to destroy the centralized social media platforms that talk about free speech, but they're never going to be really free speech. And Carnivore destroys the falsehood of fiat food and these carbohydrates that everyone's stuck on, and the seed oils and the crap that is making people unhealthy and sick and making chronic disease a normal thing in society, which it should not be. And I just posted something yesterday or reposted, I think my friend Valerie Ann Smith, who I also had on the podcast, she posted how the CDC checkpoints that they have for newborns and infants, I can't remember the exact numbers, but the amount of months it should take them to begin crawling and begin walking and begin talking, these that have been in place for many, many decades or longer, they're increasing those numbers because babies aren't developing as well anymore. They're developing more slowly, and they're having more health issues because we're feeding them garbage too. And look at any of the formula we're feeding them and from the store. It's just fucking seed oils. And so we're giving babies horrible, non-nutritious crap. And that's a perfect example of where these huge government agencies just have too much power. They're going to keep bullshitting. And fiat money is the root problem there. Carnivore, Bitcoin, Nostr, we can just keep repeating it over and over. These are the solutions, people. Um, I'm really glad that so many people are starting to wake up to that. Well, I don't know if I should even say so many people. It's still a pretty small group, but it was cool to hear Harry had it and you had it too. I'd love to bring more and more people on who figured those three out, because I think that they really are the trifecta that gets us out of this mess. And we just need to really focus in on those and continue pushing the message and doing our thing, continue learning. And yeah, man, is there anything else you'd like to add? That seems like a pretty good place to take this one away.
Yeah, maybe one note on the last part we're talking about here, because you're saying Bitcoin will destroy fiat, and this, like, on one hand, I agree, but on the other hand, they will destroy themselves rather. Like if you put Bitcoin next to the other one, if they're both pirate ships, it's a weird analogy, but if they're both pirate ships, Bitcoin isn't shooting cannons; they're shooting the cannons at themselves. Bitcoin is just a life raft that's there, and this is the first time in history that we have a falling civilization, and there's already a solution. This is a unique event in the history of mankind.
Bitcoin is a life raft. Absolutely agree with that. That's a perfect analogy. Stacking Beats, my friend, has been a wonderful conversation. Really appreciate you coming by. I think people are going to really enjoy this. It's a really fun combo to have you and Harry on back to back. Just two people I've never really interacted with, but it's this beautiful phenomenon we have where you find people who share these interests, the Carnivore, Bitcoin, and Nostr being the three huge ones for me. If I find someone that is into just one of those, I know they're going to be pretty cool. But if they're into all three of them, I know they're going to be just awesome. So just continues being proven true. It's been an excellent chat with you, my friend, and I look forward to keep in touch with you.
For sure. I hope someone finds our conversation valuable, and I'll see you on Nostr, man.
I'm sure they will. I'll see you on Nostr as well, and everyone else who's listening will see you on Nostr too. Get off X, get off Instagram, Facebook. They don't care about you. Come to Nostr. We'll see you there.
Definitely.